In challenging economic times like these, it's tempting to take on what I call a scarcity mindset. It's like the pie is getting smaller and we want to make sure that we get our piece of pie. And we start to get anxiety over that. Are these checks from the government going to come on time? Am I still going to get paid? Will I be able to find work? Is my industry ever going to come back? Will I have enough money to retire on, or do I need to spend that now? Those kinds of questions, it's so tempting to get nervous and anxious and start to think in terms of scarcity. And I want to talk to you about a story of abundance from Matthew 15. In Matthew 15, Jesus is teaching to a large crowd of about 4,000 men and their families. So you can estimate lots of people, basically a basketball stadium full of people. And he's got compassion on them. He doesn't want to send them away and have them not have anything to eat because they've come a long ways to gather and there's no concession stands here. And so he wants to make sure that they have something to eat and basically tells his disciples, why don't you give them something to eat? And they're thinking, how are we going to be able to do that? All we've got are some loaves and some fish, basically a lunchbox. And how's that going to feed people? So he had people sit down and he passed out the food. And there were 7 big baskets left over after everyone had eaten their fill. Now, you might think, well, that's because he's the Son of God and he's got extra pull, and that's just to show off that he's cool. And no, it's he was giving them a lesson on abundance, not to worry about it. And I'm not saying that our problems aren't real. I'm not saying that our economic situation is not challenging right now. I'm not saying that the pandemic hasn't caused a shockwave through the economy, especially in some industries. It certainly has. What I'm saying is, when we're facing these very real problems, it's not a matter of pretending like they aren't there. It's choosing not to have a scarcity mindset. Because even in hard times, an abundance mindset has a lot of advantages. For one thing, if we think in terms of abundance, in terms of there's always going to be enough, then we tend to be more generous. And if we're more generous, our lives go better because we get along with people and we have the joy of giving. And that leads to just all kinds of sort of a ripple effect of waves of all kinds of good things. So there's an advantage there. And scarcity also brings us into hoarding. And when we're into hoarding, we tend to gather everything for ourselves and we stop looking around us. We're so focused on what we're trying to keep that we forget how to gather. And we miss opportunities right, left, and center. And if we have a scarcity mentality, we're likely not to go after certain economic opportunities because we think, well, they won't work. We get really pessimistic. And the more pessimistic we get, the less things we try. And so I'm not saying that things aren't tough right now, but what I am saying is that the idea of abundance and holding that in our minds as we go through a difficult time is worth cultivating. It's worth cultivating because it's like a life preserver. If you get thrown out of a boat in high, choppy seas, it's good to have a life preserver. And that life preserver is that faith that comes from an abundant mentality that God will provide for us. And this isn't some weird new agey thing like it's our attitude is going to attract gold to us somehow and the money is just going to come flowing into our wallet. That's not it at all. What I'm saying is a faith filled attitude will make a difference. And there's no reason not to have one when it comes down to it. So you've got the feeding of the 4,000, a wonderful, wonderful Bible story. And it teaches the disciples that there will always be enough in the end. And the truth is, we are living in fantastic times. We're living in times of abundance like no one has ever seen before. I go through these big grocery stores and I think, are people really ever going to buy all this stuff? Are there enough people to eat it all? And I look at these big department stores and I see all the clothing and I think, are they really going to sell all this stuff? So we're just the productivity level has risen so high and the efficiency level and the transportation costs have dropped so much that we're living in a time of great plenty. And to have that robbed from us because of a sense of scarcity, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not worth having a scarcity mentality. So I would just encourage you to read this story in the Bible and apply it to your life. Every time you start thinking scarcity, oh, are we going to be okay? Start thinking abundance. Start thinking having more than enough so that I can give to others, so that we can form communities, so that we can solve these problems together. Solving economic problems, and they're real, with an abundance mindset is always better than trying to solve them with a scarcity mindset. Try to think in terms of being abundant and helping other people to be abundant. And that's the good news for today. And I'll talk to you again tomorrow.